Join me in welcoming Sandra Caraveo, LULAC National Programs Manager, to introduce our next panel, Living Tobacco Free, Be a Part of the Change. Take it away, Sandra.
Hi all, I hope that you're enjoying day 3 of the LULAC National Virtual Summit. One of the most pressing issues affecting Latinos is health. Disparities in access, quality of service, and the burden of preventable chronic illnesses are rampant in our community. LULAC's health programs focus on improving health outcomes through engaging our local councils, national partners, and corporate sponsors in campaigns dedicated to raising awareness and inspiring healthy lifestyles for change in our communities. Our next training is presented by one of our newest health partners, the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. The Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids is a leading advocacy organization working to reduce tobacco use and its deadly consequences in the United States and around the world. Through strategic communications and policy advocacy campaigns, they promote the adoption and proven solutions that are most effective in reducing tobacco use and save the most lives. Tobacco has a long history of causing harm to communities of color and youth. With clever advertising tactics and attractive styles and flavors, the tobacco industry has managed to rebrand the cigarette for the 21st century. This workshop will discuss the harmful impact of tobacco, the history of regulating the industry, and how to advocate for further restrictions. I'm so excited to introduce to you our partners that will be presenting today. Portia Reddick-White, Vice President, Strategic Partnerships with the Tobacco-Free Kids Campaign. Grace Plowman, Tobacco-Free Kids Ambassador. Claudia Rodas, Director, Southern Region, Tobacco-Free Kids. Gustavo Torres, Director, Youth Advocacy for Tobacco-Free Kids. Without further ado, I will turn it over to our partners to go ahead and start their presentation.
Thank you, Sandra, for that warm welcome. And on behalf of the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, we appreciate this partnership with LULAC. We welcome all of the LULAC members who are joining us today during this session. My name is Claudia Rodas. I am with the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. Now, while the next hour will be a little difficult not being in person and interact, I wanted you all to just take a moment to check where your chat box is and check where your Bitmojis. My hope is that you will be able to interact with us, ask questions in the chat box, let us know that you agree or maybe disagree with some of what we'll be sharing today. I want you to just give it a try. You could just take about 15 seconds here, give it a try, make sure you can find that chat box and make sure you can find the thumbs up, the clapping, the happy faces on there. Like I said, we want to make sure that we are hearing from you throughout this session and we are addressing any questions that you may have here today. So once again, thank you for showing up today. Your presence is a testament to your commitment to make change for your future in your community. So if you agree with that statement, give it a thumbs up. Awesome, awesome. Thanks for doing that. I want to take you a moment to just tell you a little bit about myself. I serve as the director of the Southern Region for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. I cover an 11-state region, mainly in the southern part of the nation. I get to meet youth, parents, school and medical professionals, and other nonprofits working and collaborating together to better the health of their community. I mainly focus on tobacco control policies, and throughout this session, we're going to define that, let you know what exactly that means, and how you can get involved and be part of the movement to make your community healthier. I live in Houston, Texas. So anybody from Texas, again, can I get a thumbs up, applause, happy faces? I was born and raised in the Houston area. I'm very, very familiar with LULAC. In fact, my personal story with LULAC is that there were some volunteers that helped fill out, came to my high school and filled out some financial aid forms. So I am very familiar with the work that LULAC has and have had a personal impact. So I am just delighted to be here today and be able to partner in a professional way with this organization. For the youth that are out here today participating and listening in, while I received a degree in business from the University of Houston, Go Cougs. I ended up in the nonprofit arena for most of the last 2 decades of my career. What I hope that you take from that and from my personal story and from my personal mission towards what I do every day is it doesn't matter what career you end up doing. Don't forget that you need to make change in your community and your voice is important. As was mentioned earlier by Sandra, the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids is the leading advocacy organization, both here in the United States and across the global world, working to reduce tobacco use and its deadly consequences. Our mission, it's very simple. We want a world free of death and disease caused by tobacco. Can I get a thumbs up if you agree with that? Awesome. As students return to classrooms this fall, we want to make sure that youth and parents and others that surround youth and support them are armed with the knowledge that will lead them to make the right choices for their future. During this session, we're going to discuss the dangers of tobacco products. We'll take a look at the history, the long history of the tobacco industry targeting the Latino communities and our youth. We'll talk about some resources that are available, one, to learn about the issue, and two, if you yourself or know somebody who's looking to quit using these products. And we also hope that you would join the fight and the movement to fight big tobacco, who continues to target our community on a daily basis. Today, we will have 3 wonderful panelists who will share all of this information and their stories with you. We will bring up their screen momentarily, so I'm going to let everybody get ready for that. But Portia Reddick-White, I know she was mentioned by name, but Portia, if you can just go on video and just wave to everybody. And Portia is our Vice President for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids for Strategic Partnerships. Awesome. And Gustavo, if you can wave and say hello. Gustavo is our Director of Youth Advocacy, and I'll share more about him in a moment before he presents. But Gustavo has been at this, working against big tobacco since he was the age of many of you who are out there, youth and young adults. And Grace Plowman, if you can say hello. So Grace is our future, somebody who has dedicated her time in educating her peers on the dangers of using tobacco products. And she will share her story. So Portia, if you can get back on the screen, we'll pull our presentation up momentarily, but let me tell you a little bit more about Portia. Before joining the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, Portia served as a lobbyist for the National Education Association, where she represented the interests of 3 million members and students. You go, Portia. Can I get some thumbs up there? She also led the Government Affairs Department as the Interim Health and Family Director with the American Association of Retired Persons, or as we all know it, AARP. And she has extensive experience in political campaigns. She's represented and worked closely with union groups. And she even owned her own firm, her own consulting firm for some time, Reddick-White & Associates. Very impressive. She graduated at the University of Baltimore Law School, and she earned her Bachelor's of Arts and Master's of Education at the Oral Roberts University. Can I get a thumbs up for her? Something interesting that you won't find on her professional resume is that Portia is a recorded national musician. She had her own band. She created her own CD at one point. She has sang backup for several famous singers, performed on TV, and she's traveled the world. She plays various instruments and loves all kinds of music. And she's also shifted careers throughout time. So she was a flight attendant, she was a teacher, and then she eventually went to law school and has landed here working in nonprofit advocacy, particularly around tobacco control. And what she wanted to share with the youth that are on and participating with us today is that it just goes to show you that you can be whatever you want to be. Thank you, Portia, for sharing that. I'm going to turn it over to you to share with us the history of tobacco control and the current state of youth tobacco use. Portia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Claudia. Wow. Thumbs up for Claudia, right? way to introduce the path forward in our presentation today. So I've got a slide presentation that I'd like to share with you starting now. Great, we're bringing that up on the screen. We're gonna get it. So there we go, way to share. So we've been around for 25 years, as Claudia shared, the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, and our goal, our focus, our vision is exactly what Claudia stated. It's a future free of the death and disease caused by tobacco, because tobacco has killed enough and we really don't need any more killing, do we? As much as we can help it, we need to protect ourselves, our loved ones. And despite enormous progress in reducing smoking, tobacco use is still the leading cause of preventable death in the United States. And it imposes a terrible toll on families, businesses, government. Tobacco kills more than 480,000 people annually. And that's more than AIDS, more than alcohol, than car accidents, illegal drugs, murders, and suicides combined, if you can believe that. Tobacco costs the US over $225 billion in healthcare expenditures and more than $180 billion in lost production and productivity every year. So of all the kids who become new and regular daily smokers each year, almost a third of them will ultimately die from it. In addition, smokers lose a decade of life just because of smoking. We see tobacco as a social justice issue because of that. At its core, tobacco is a social justice issue. The tobacco industry spends billions of dollars to target certain populations with marketing and to create new products to hook new users. So we're all familiar with the cigarette, but this is beyond the cigarette now. It's also the e-cigarette. We call that a non-combustible cigarette. Combustible is the cigarette itself. Also combustible, we're very familiar with cigars. And so as a result of decades of targeting in deep health inequity communities of color, the LGBTQ community, women, kids, teens, and people with behavioral concerns, we know that tobacco is a social justice issue. Let's talk a little bit about tobacco's toll on the Hispanic community. So tobacco use rates among Latino Americans it's actually lower than other racial and ethnic groups, including African Americans, white Americans, American Indian, Alaskan Native Americans. Compared to white smokers, Hispanic smokers tend to consume fewer cigarettes per day and are less likely than all other racial and ethnic groups to be daily smokers. But there's more that I'd like to share with you. I want to share with you a little bit more about the toll of really what's happening in the US. From the US point of view, 4.6% or 700,000 boys and girls, high school students who are current past smokers exist. That was in 2020 and right now. High school males who are current cigar smokers as a whole in 2020, 5.4%. And high school students who are current e-cigarette users, remember I said that there was this new cigarette, the non-combustible cigarette, the e-cigarette, that's 19.6. That's how many high school students who are current e-cigarette users. And as a whole, high school students who are current tobacco users, that's 23.6%. So daily, if you were to look at this total daily, kids under 18 who become new, regular daily smokers each day, 235. Way too many, way too much, what we can definitely prevent. So tobacco's toll, specifically on the Hispanic community. Among Hispanic youth, e-cigarettes really are the most utilized tobacco products. Given current rates of tobacco use, nearly 1 in 4 Hispanic high school students are current users of any tobacco products. I'm going to share this next slide with you so you can see that. See that? Lots of numbers there. And we're going to stop for a second because I want to give you a little bit of taste of really an ad that we've actually put together recently. I'm going to share that with you, and you might see some of the astounding facts within it as well. Let's see the ad.
You're home with your kids. What could they really get into? If big tobacco has their way, nicotine addiction. Today, millions of kids use flavored e-cigarettes. More get addicted every day. Big tobacco targets our kids with flavored e-cigarettes like cotton candy, bubble gum, and menthol, addictive products that harm developing brains. It's time to eliminate flavored e-cigarettes and protect our kids. The time is now. Stop big tobacco from targeting our kids.
So as you see, big tobacco targets several groups. Kids are huge. So not only kids in general, but they just target youth in general with their many different flavors. Flavors are driving the popularity of tobacco products among youth. So when we've reached out and when they've done some statistics gathering and surveys amongst all groups of youth and young adults, we have found that flavors really are the driving force of the popularity of tobacco products. The vast majority of youth who started using tobacco initiated with a flavored tobacco product. Some of the of you on this series right now looking and in this workshop, you might be addicted. You might have started out with a product, and I probably could guarantee that that product had a flavor, probably a menthol flavor. So when you use flavors, you're able to mask the taste and the harshness of the product itself, especially menthol. So this also includes not just cigarettes, but it also includes cigars. And they're often sold for as little as $2 or under $1. And you have your e-liquids and your e-cigarettes, your menthol cigarettes, you chew, you dip, you sniff, you snuff. So you see there are so many different products out there. And of course, these products are driving the popularity of this. So the Surgeon General has called on extraordinary rates of youth e-cigarette use as an epidemic. It's been fueled by thousands of flavors on the market in these various products that you saw in that previous slide. So that's 15,500 e-cigarette flavors and counting. 7 out of 10 current youth e-cigarette users said they use them simply because they like the flavors. Who wouldn't like it? Comes in cotton candy, comes in popcorn, comes in menthol, comes in, oh my goodness, sour apple. I love sour apple, right? So anyway, all of these different flavors have driven this epidemic, and it continues to rise and count. So tobacco's toll on the Hispanic community, the industry has a deep history, really, of predatory tactics. These predatory tactics have worked in many other communities, as well as the Hispanic community. The African American community is another community that has been really predatory, I want to say preyed upon. That's the word. They have been preyed upon by the tobacco industry with their products. And so these tactics include not just messages around on billboards. They do this with print and marketing messages, as well as now, as you see, maybe some of the music things that have been happening. I know you, in the introduction of me, Claudia talked about how I was involved in music. And one thing that I remember, even as a musician, when I was really involved in that, tobacco companies did sponsor events really heavily back in the day, and they're still doing that. Anyway, they also have distributed free samples in certain communities and neighborhoods. And then one thing you might notice as well is that they give price discounts and in certain communities. So tobacco retail and density, one way that they help to push this and really affect our communities and neighborhoods is because of the way that they share their products, right? The way they sell their products, the way they place stores in the density, the retailer density and access in communities that really leads to health disparities in these communities, in our communities. And studies show that living in neighborhoods with more stores that sell tobacco makes youth more likely to start and less likely to quit using tobacco. They've also located these products and these stores near schools. On average, 63% of public schools are within 1,000 feet, about 2 city blocks, of a tobacco retailer. Concentrated in lower income areas, on average, the number of tobacco retailers per square mile is nearly 5 times more in the lowest income neighborhood than in the highest income neighborhood. That's certainly unfair. Anyway, it's easy to access, as I've just shared. And then on average, 70% of city residents live within a 10-minute walk of a tobacco retailer. Really horrible. Clustered together, on average, 54% of tobacco retailers are within 500 feet of another tobacco retailer. So actually, you might see more tobacco retailers than McDonald's restaurants, and 16 more times than Starbucks, and they're all over. You've seen that. So since low-income neighborhoods that have more stores that sell tobacco, residents of these neighborhoods are exposed to more of what we call point-of-sale marketing, in-store ads, price promotions, discounts, large displays of tobacco products at the checkout counters. As you know, you might go up to, I dropped by my gas station down the street here recently, and oh my God, if I could just show you you see it right there on the screen. All of these different types of advertisements to buy, to attack, and to appeal to youth as well as adults to smoke these different products. They're price sensitive because they want people to buy them. So they offer these lower prices, coupons, discounts. They lobby tirelessly against increases in tobacco taxes. By the way, when you raise the tax on something like that, you actually lower the use because people won't want to buy it. So that's the whole piece of that. But anyway, if the cost of a pack of cigarettes was $10, the US Surgeon General's recommended price, the result would be 4.8 million fewer smokers between the age of 12 and 25. So that's why we push for more cost for that. So e-cigarette companies and vape shops know that youth are on social media. It's another way that they push their products. And they market heavily on social media platforms. On social media, you can find e-cigarette promotions, false health claims like the Biddy ad shown here, and influencers hired by these companies to post photos and videos of themselves vaping. There were even examples of these companies and shops exploiting the COVID-19 pandemic by advertising free masks with purchases and promo codes like stay home. Hey, why don't you go ahead and place a thumbs up in the chat if you saw one of those ads. It would be interesting to know. Those ads were really prevalent. Anyway, a 2020 study also found that youth who use social media the most in daily life were more likely to have a positive attitude toward e-cigarettes, and they perceived vaping as being normal and having a lower perception of the dangers of the e-cigarette use. But let me tell you, it is not normal. E-cigarettes kill. All right. So the industry tactic, the tobacco industry, as I've just shared, they've got this deep history of predatory tactics aimed to addict folks to menthol cigarettes, aimed to addict communities in a way that they can relate to, right? They really hit you directly with specific advertising directly down in your neighborhood for you. So I'm going to stop sharing here. I hope I've shared enough about exactly some of the basics of tobacco and their prevalence within the community and their tactics, their marketing schemes. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. We'd love to help you and answer those questions too. But for now, I'm going to push it back toward Claudia. Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you, Portia, for sharing that valuable information. We already gave some thumbs up. Let's give some applause there. Thanks so much. I learned a lot. I think one of the things that stood out for me the most was that tobacco use continues to be the #1 preventable cause of death. So if you can put in the chat right there, what's the one thing that you think you learned the most about in Portia's presentation? Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. Well, we know the tobacco industry has a long history of targeting communities of color, LGBTQ communities, lower socioeconomic communities, youth, young adults, and they've been doing it for far too long. In fact, the tobacco industry spent $8.2 billion in 2020 to target you, to target our communities on a daily basis. But today you can join the fight and be #BeTheFirst tobacco-free generation. Thumbs up. As Portia mentioned, if you have any questions, put those in the chat box and we will answer those as we can while I do the introduction of our next panelist. Gustavo Torres, want to jump on in a minute? So Gustavo, as I mentioned, has been involved in the tobacco control movement for a very long time. He's been involved for 25 years. He began his work as a youth advocate in California and continued his career in this field in Boston, where he was a program manager with Fenway Community Health and the National Network for the LGBT Health Equity. As a young adult, Gustavo served on Legacy's National Speakers Bureau. He was on the National Activism Council, and in 2012, he was recognized for his efforts with the Trailblazer Award for outstanding and continuous leadership in the tobacco control movement by Legacy. Currently, Gustavo is the Director of Youth Advocacy for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, where he oversees the development and implementation of innovative youth-focused programs, including Take Down Tobacco. So you can visit our website, takedowntobacco.org, the 4-time award-winning online youth advocacy training program. Again, we invite you to be #BeTheFirst tobacco-free generation. Thumbs up, Gustavo. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. First, I would like to start off by, quoting one of my favorite quotes from Cesar Chavez, who stated, "Students must have initiative. They should not be mere imitators. They must learn to think and act for themselves to be free." At the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, the one thing that we understand more than anything else is supporting young people in this vision as we work together to create the first tobacco-free generation. We understand the laws and policies that we're working on doesn't just impact us today, but it impacts our future generations. And young people all across the country have really been standing up to big tobacco. And that's why we are truly excited to be able to partner with LULAC to really highlight not only the achievements that young people have been doing across the country, but to work in collaboration as we really work to improve the health outcomes for all of our communities as a whole. So I want to first share 2 resources, and then we'll go back and have a little bit more dialogue, and then I'll come back and share specifically what some young people have been doing. Because we understand at the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids that young people are truly the leaders of today. And it's important for us to provide tools and resources to support young people in their activism. We understand that tobacco as the #1 cause of preventable death is something we're passionate about. And it's one of the things that I've been fighting. I've been fighting against big tobacco for the past 25 years, understanding the impact that it's had not only on my family, but on my community. But one thing I learned very early on is the power of my voice was really able to shift and create a healthier, more just community. As Portia was talking about, you can't go to a bodega or a corner store around your neighborhood without seeing Big Tobacco's advertising and marketing, whether it's through e-cigarettes, cheap, sweet cigars, or even e-cigarettes. We know that the tobacco industry is continuing to bombard our neighborhoods and our communities to sell us death and disease. One of the tools and main tools and resources that we have is our Digital Advocacy Institute at takedowntobacco.org. We have a special link here, bit.ly TDT_LULAC, which will be put into the chat momentarily. But this tool is really training young people on how to combat the tobacco industry through advocacy, skills-based training. We understand that we need to learn a little bit more about the issue and how Big Tobacco is targeting our communities. So we have some great one-on-one courses in there. But the crux of this program really is training young people on the advocacy process through messaging, understanding that messaging does matter. When we message to activate and get people involved in our issue, it's the crux of our individual advocacy. So messaging matters is one of our key trainings. Informing decision makers, understanding that decision makers are the ones who are making decisions on our behalf. So as young people who, in most instances, whether you're under the age of 18 and you can't vote, you do have an actual voice, and elected officials actually listen to you. So one of our trainings that we have available, Informing Decision Makers, really teaches you the tools and tricks on how to best engage with decision makers to support your individual advocacy. Mastering the media. We understand that the media is a key driver of information, whether it's digital social media or traditional media like newspapers. It's a key way not only to meet elected officials and key decision makers in your community where they are, but also a way for us to elevate our voices on the key issues that we're working on. And then the last of our advocacy trainings is activities that take down tobacco. Understand that when we plan high impact activities, not only does it get elected officials attention, but also it garners the media attention. And so you weave all of that with, messaging, ample messaging to support your movement, and we become an unstoppable force together as we work to create the first tobacco-free generation. So definitely take a moment and check out this great resource. Caroline's going to drop it in the chat for you as well. But one of the other things when we're talking about not just training young people in advocacy in this issue of tobacco, understanding that the skills that you'll learn through the Digital Advocacy Institute will go way beyond tobacco. And we hope that these tools and resources support you in your overall advocacy in helping to create healthier, just communities. Additionally, one of the big things that we want to talk about and share is the importance of supporting your peers and supporting communities in quitting tobacco use. We know that our communities have the lowest tobacco rates, and we want to definitely keep it that way. But unfortunately, the e-cigarette epidemic could be threatening that. And so it's important to share with our peers and our community members resources to really help young people quit. So we've partnered with the Truth Initiative on the Text to Quit vaping program. So if you know someone that is struggling with trying to quit or is looking for resources on quitting using these products, tell them to text takedown to 88709. Once again, text takedown to 88709. This is a free text to quit program that really is supporting young people in creating, in becoming their best self in quitting nicotine addiction. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Claudia, but I will definitely be back to share more resources, tools, and tricks about what young people are doing in advocating against big tobacco. Claudia?
Thank you, Gustavo, for sharing that information and those resources. Can I get some thumbs up, some applause, some hearts there on those emojis? Thanks for that. We definitely want to hear from you. We want to make sure that you are getting information and that it's that, information that will be helpful for you and your families. Gustavo, I know you mentioned Cesar Chavez, and I failed to mention this in your bio on how he is somebody you wanted to be when you grow up. And it sounds like by you just sharing some of the information and a lot of what you've done throughout your professional career, you have definitely embodied what Cesar Chavez paved that way in this public health arena. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you for your dedication and commitment. Once again, I just want to mention that 88709 on Takedown. I heard you mention Truth, and I heard you mention our partnership with LULAC. I want to know that we can't do this alone. We can't make change in our community alone. We must partner with groups like LULAC, like the Truth Initiative, several other organizations that we partner with to ensure that we are sharing this information so that it goes into those homes of those families so they can make the best decisions for their home. So I want to thank you for mentioning those partnerships. Thank you for sharing those resources as well. I want to go back to Portia. So Gustavo, you can turn off your video there, and Portia, you can come back up. Portia, I just wanted to go back to you and ask you, what are some ways that we can help prevent youth tobacco use? So Gustavo talked a little bit about the resources that are available. We could talk a little bit about how to access those information through a toolkit that's going to be made available to LULAC members. But what does that look like? How is it that, what are those ways that we can work together to help prevent youth from using tobacco products?
I'm glad you asked, because this is where it's more than just youth that can be involved. Tobacco policy and action is something that we invite everyone to be involved with. We know that we have been working, as I'm sharing again on a PowerPoint, that flavors hook kids. And so we work together to fight and prohibit these flavored tobacco products. We're working at the local, state, and national level to pass and enact policies to prohibit flavored tobacco products without exemption. What that means is that we want to make sure that we can do it without people saying, yes, but, right? So our advocates have been working to build community support, to educate decision makers, and to persuade legislators to act to protect kids and teens from the tobacco industry's manipulation and targeting. And up to date, you see these photos of some of the actions that we've taken around the country, including in Washington, D.C. But so far, I want to share with you about the states. We've got 6 states, including Washington, D.C., where a bill has been passed. And so that prohibits the sale of flavored tobacco. We're actually waiting on Congress to complete some action on that D.C. bill. As you know, Congress has a lot to do with D.C. action these days. Massachusetts, D.C., and California included menthol cigarettes in their prohibition. And activity at the state and local level in prohibiting flavored tobacco is really just gaining momentum. So we invite you to join us within these policy campaigns that we have across the country, including some of the ones that you, Claudia, thank you, as a director, a regional advocacy director that you're involved in. From a federal legislation status, in terms of that, we've got the Protecting American Lungs and Reversing the Youth Tobacco Epidemic. It passed actually in the House of Representatives last February, and that was 2020. And the legislation would prohibit the sale of all flavored tobacco products, and it includes several other tobacco control provisions as well that would go a long way in reversing tobacco's toll on the U.S. and protecting kids. What you may or may not know about Congress, since that was last Congress year, it's going to have to be reintroduced again. So we need help with that. And we welcome you being involved and helping us with that, reaching out to your representatives and making sure that they know that this is an important bill that we would love for you would love to see come back up again. And currently in the U.S. House of Representatives in this Congress is the Quit Because of COVID-19 Act. It would ensure that all CHIP and Medicaid enrollees would have access to proven tobacco cessation treatments during the COVID-19 emergency. So we know that that's really, really important, that these provisions this cessation treatment provisions be added, and folks would be able to utilize that during this critical time as well. So we welcome your input and support with that bill, and reaching out to your congressional members, letting them know that this matters to you and you would love for them to vote to pass this to make it a reality. And finally, just want to share a little bit about our work anyway. What we have done, we call out the tobacco industry on what they're doing from this predatory piece. Frankly, the tobacco industry usually kind of weaves their way in and out of our communities, and they get support by giving support, which is very interesting, but they can give dollars to help us in other areas, and they do that. And when they do that, people forget about the fact that they have this predatory tactic and action to actually put these products in our communities that are not great. So we've got to promote these good policies like raising the price of tobacco products, making all the workplaces continue to make them smoke-free, because that has happened for a while. The graphic warning on all these tobacco products, investing in programs that help smokers quit, help us conduct these tough anti-smoking campaigns, and frankly, just end the sale of all flavored tobacco products, including the menthol cigarettes. That's what we need help with. And so that is work that we would love to see you involved in. Give us a thumbs up and let us know that you're interested in doing that as well. And Claudia, back to you.
Thank you, Portia, for explaining a little bit more in terms of concrete ways that LULAC members and chapters can get involved in improving the health of their communities. If I think about activism, and when I think about organizations that when they come together as a group to really make change, LULAC is certainly one of the first organizations that come to mind for me. So I hope that all of you listening here today will want to join that cause and learn more about these specific ways to get involved with these different bills that have been introduced at the congressional level. Gustavo, if I can turn it over to you again just for a minute. You started talking a little bit about different ways to get involved. You shared some resources, talked a little about how to communicate with legislators and so forth. Can you share just a little bit more, some more concrete ways that those who are interested in this training session today, if they do want to get involved, what does that look like and what does that mean?
Definitely. Thank you so much, Claudia. On the screen in front, again, just wanted to provide that direct link to the resources, to the Digital Advocacy Institute, in addition to the Text to Quit vaping code. Again, these are really great resources, not only for young people to continue to level up your own activism, but also resources to help your peers who are struggling to quit vaping or nicotine addiction specifically. But as we understand, truly, the power of the youth voice is monumental. Throughout time and history, young people have been leading every major movement across the country, and a lot of even more across the globe. And so as you, young people on the call, or folks who work with young people, it's important to really understand that it's our job as practitioners who work with young people to provide the space, the tools, and the resources for you to be able to own your movement and own your generation and what you want to see for generations to come, as we continue to pass the torch to each of you all. One of the major campaigns that we worked on in Texas was Texas 21. This is a brief snapshot of the 21 young people who were leading this coalition who successfully worked to pass Tobacco 21 in Texas. So just another example of young people who are leading the fight. And whether we're talking about tobacco or health justice more broadly, or food access, or environmental issues, the one thing that we all have in common is that the advocacy and the power of what we provide in supporting young people is really what shapes the future of tomorrow as young people are leading the movement today. So if you'd like to get more involved in some of the direct work, you could visit takedowntobacco.org, where you can sign up to join our youth and young adult movement specifically. When you go to that website, and or when you sign up for the digital advocacy training institute that we talked to you about, you'll have opportunities to get involved, let's say by signing the youth petition to FDA, urging the FDA to stop selling flavored tobacco products, or understanding that flavored tobacco products are a key driver and initiator for youth tobacco use. We currently have a partnership with DoSomething.org. So again, bit.ly/do something_LULAC. Again, to get involved. This campaign really is about uniting, looking at the intersectionality of tobacco and our environment, the intersectionality of tobacco, mental health, understanding the impact LGBT communities the impact LGBT communities are facing due to tobacco-free predatory marketing, and also really looking overall at how this is truly a social justice issue. There are scholarships that are available. So again, check out bit.ly/do something_LULAC. This will be put in the chat as well. But as we close and as we get ready to transition to a young person who is leading the fight in her own community, again, I just want to plug the Digital Advocacy Institute as a key resource to support you in leveling up your activism, providing you the tools and resources to really take on the toughest fights within your own community. So I want to leave with another Cesar Chavez quote. Again, this is one of the most impactful quotes for me is, "The fight is never about grapes or lettuce. It's always about the people." Again, at the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, we understand that we are doing the work alongside of people for our communities, knowing that big tobacco has done enough, has impacted our communities enough. And so we are only as strong as we are united. And I hope that you all join us as we work to take down tobacco. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Claudia so we could hear from an amazing youth advocate really changing norms within her community. So Claudia.
Muchas gracias, Gustavo, for passing that torch over back to me. So Grace, if you can come up for a minute. So Gustavo, I want to thank you for sharing those links and websites on opportunities for our participants to get involved. Grace is, let me tell you a little bit about Grace before we ask her to share a little bit about her story and ways to get involved, and how the journey of her tobacco control journey, tobacco control advocate journey has come to fruition. So Grace is a high school graduate from Mounds View High School in Shoreview, Minnesota. So anybody out there from Minnesota, thumbs up. She first got involved in tobacco prevention and control her sophomore year in high school. She's worked on a couple of different tobacco control issues during high school. One was raising the purchase age of tobacco to 21. She has also testified before her legislative public health committee on flavored tobacco products and prohibiting the sale of flavored tobacco products at the state level. She's done a series of media interviews. She's spoken at city council's meetings. She's met with multiple legislators, trying to get them to become champions on pursuing policies, tobacco control policies. So I want to thank you, Grace, for being here. I appreciate your dedication and your time, and also sharing your story with others on the panel today. So can we start off, Grace, and you tell us a little bit on the why? Why is it that you chose tobacco prevention and control? Why is that issue important to you?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. So I kind of got involved through volunteering, and I just saw at my school that many of my peers were using tobacco products like vaping in school bathrooms, stuff like that. And I just kind of eventually learned about Answer, which is a nonprofit in Minnesota for non-smokers. And they were kind of recruiting young people to participate in compliance checks and get involved in other ways. It was just really important to me because I was seeing my peers do it. I had seen other people in my life struggling with addiction. And I even knew of some stores where people were buying tobacco products under the age of 18, which is why I started doing tobacco compliance checks. And that kind of led to a group of us who kind of started a club on my high school campus.
Well, thanks for sharing the why. And I did want to do a little bit of a clarification because Grace has a very impressive resume. Not only is she this public health advocate already through her high school tenure, but she graduated from high school and she's over at the University of Minnesota. So kudos to you wanting to study public policy. So not only are you starting here now, but that's something that you want to take on beyond in your adulthood. So kudos. Thank you so much. Sometimes we think, where do we start? Maybe there's somebody out there right now, youth or young adult, and they're like, great. Oh my God, I'm seeing this every day. I'm just like you said, I'm seeing my youth, but me, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? How do I even start? And so I know that you started the club in your high school. So can you tell us, what was that first step? So you saw the problem and then you took action. Talk a little bit about that first action you took.
Yeah, so I actually started out through volunteering, which is a thing that anybody can get involved in. It's pretty easy. You can kind of find places that are organizing tobacco compliance checks, which is an easy way to get involved. That kind of entails going around to retail stores and ensuring that they are not selling to people under the age of 18 or 21 to make sure that these products are not getting out to people. And then as well as doing that, there are a ton of other ways to get involved through organizations. You can start in a club or an organization at your school, which you kind of have to, it's a different process depending on what school you go to. You can kind of talk to administration and let them know that that's something you're interested in starting in, and your administration should be glad to help you out with that. Otherwise, you can email legislators, volunteer, follow tobacco news can really help, and you can kind of see what's happening and look for other ways to involve yourself as you see things happening in the media. Or you can support organizations with similar aspirations like Tobacco Free Kids and get involved in the programs that they're running and other things they're doing.
Awesome. Well, that's great. But, let's take it a little bit step further there. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to take this step, right? I'm going to start this school. I see the problem. Okay, I'm going to go talk to my school counselor and teachers and support this. But, maybe some doubt comes in and says, I'm just a teenager. Like, who's really going to listen to me out in the community, But you went to city council meetings. You met with these legislators. So can you talk a little bit about that role that high school schoolers do play in their community? Like, do you feel like your voice was heard when you're talking to these people who are making these decisions and they get elected and you're just like, oh, I'm just a 15 or 16-year-old? What role do high schoolers play in the overall change in their community?
Yeah, so the tobacco industry is really interested in targeting teenagers and young adults because the younger you start, the longer you have to be addicted and buying their products. So since the tobacco industry is very known for targeting teenagers, legislators love to hear from teenagers. Anybody can just go to a city council meeting and decide to speak, which is what I did. You just kind of see what city council is discussing on the docket. And if there are things involving tobacco control, such as like an ordinance banning menthol in your city, you can just literally show up to the city council meeting, or if it's on Zoom, just show up and they will say, like, would any citizens like to speak? And you just kind of speak about why you support this. And that is a huge step in tobacco advocacy, because your legislators really do want to hear from you on what you think about the issues. And your words are more impactful coming from a teen because you are so targeted by the tobacco industry.
Good, great. Thanks for sharing that. Now, you worked on raising the age to 21 in your community. Can you just tell us one of your biggest lessons learned from working on that campaign?
Yeah, I guess I would say that my biggest lesson I learned is kind of there are going to be some people that do not support the mission at all. They're very like against tobacco control and they think that it should be everyone's free choice. But it was most important to me to remember why I'm doing this and remember that the tobacco industry is targeting very at-risk groups like teens with mental health issues, teens of color, and that we are already marginalized communities and we don't need to marginalize ourselves further with getting involved in addiction.
Yeah, yeah. And you saw firsthand, obviously, in your school, right, among your peers and what they're doing. But it's my understanding you also were involved on the compliance check and you also got to see what retailers are doing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, compliance checks are a little bit nerve-wracking. Sometimes you kind of have to work with police, and while that is not always the most pleasant experience, you do get to see a lot of behind the scenes what's going on with like the legal side of it and the side of the retailers. Like a lot of retailers, they'll have systems in place to kind of specifically make sure they aren't selling to teens, and those aren't always used properly. Sometimes there's issues and there's mistakes made when they're entering the ID, because I mean, it's all really a process where there's a lot of room for human error, but the most important thing is to make sure that these regulations are being followed as closely as possible so that these mistakes aren't happening or that there are not people who are just selling to teens because they don't think it's a big deal.
Awesome, awesome. Last question here. What advice do you have for young people who are interested in getting involved?
My advice would be just keep going, like dive into it, and you don't have to like immediately get involved in everything. You can take it step by step if you want to, but the most important thing is to start in the first place. Start somewhere, doing anything, whether that's emailing legislators, trying to sign up for tobacco compliance checks, just following tobacco news and supporting petitions and stuff like that. Just starting is the biggest step.
Well, thank you, Grace, for joining us. I am just humbled and honored for your time and your dedication to this cause. You are making a change in your community. You're exactly why we do what we do. So thank you for sharing your story and thanks for being here with us today. Could I get some applause and thumbs up and some hearts for Grace? Awesome. Well, I know there's just a quick 30-second ad that we're going to show up. That's going to go up right now. And then we're just going to go ahead and end this session in the last couple of minutes.
Tobacco companies hook our kids with flavored e-cigarettes. E-cigarettes are sleek and easy to hide. So if your kid is vaping, it may be hard to spot, but the health risks are impossible to ignore. Nicotine is highly addictive and can harm developing brains, impacting your kids' attention, learning, and mood, in the classroom and at home. Students should be going back to school, not back to addiction. We must stop tobacco companies from targeting our kids.
Thank you for that ad. As we wrap up this session, can we get more thumbs up, more applauses for all our panelists? Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Gustavo. Thank you, Portia, for sharing this wealth of information with everyone. Not only sharing the information, but talking about how we educate our community, how we can advocate for our communities. If anybody can make change in their communities, I know LULAC can be in the forefront on making this change because they know their families come first, their youth come first. If you're interested in getting more involved, we will be having and partnering up with LULAC on some upcoming workshops this fall, so stay tuned on those dates. We hope that you will come back and join us. A toolkit's going to be made available for LULAC members, both for youth, young adults, and other adult allies. To get this information, start talking about this in the community. That's the number one first thing you can do. Let's just start talking about it. We know the problem exists there. There are various websites, takedowntobacco.org. There's some that Gustavo shared a little while ago that you can go on and join and start receiving information. And I'm going to challenge everybody right now to pull out their phones, go to tfk.org/join. That's tfk.org/join. Very simple to remember. Sign up today. And I want to say thank you. I want to say mil gracias to everybody for spending the time with us, learning about this. And my hope is that you will work to get a future that's brighter and better for all. Thank you.